My name is Esmeralda. When my parents sent me to school, I got stressed. When I got stressed, I went on the internet to unwind and found Doctor Who. When I found Doctor Who, I watched every episode since 1963. When I watched Doctor Who nonstop, I passed out because of lack of eating for the past 3 days. Parents, let me be an example. Don't send your children to school. Now, you might have just thought that was a funny video about a weird girl named Esmeralda, but really,
That video was a perfect example of how to use deductive reasoning.
today we're going to give you a lesson on logical ways to reason if something is true, which includes the use of deductive reasoning and inductive reasoning. Let's begin with deductive reasoning.
Deductive reasoning is a step-by-step logical argument used to prove if something is true.
Deductive reasoning can be broken down into two laws, the law of syllogism and the law of detachment.
Let's talk about the law of syllogism. The law of syllogism in deductive reasoning is a use of three if-then statements, which are used to prove if something is true.
These three if-then statements are usually written in this format. If A is true, then B is true. And if B is true, then C is true. Therefore, we can conclude that if A is true, then C is true. That's how you use the law of syllogism.
Here's an example. If a triangle contains an angle greater than 90 degrees, which is the A statement, then it contains an obtuse angle, which is a B statement.
If a triangle contains an obtuse angle, which is the B statement, then it is an obtuse triangle, which is the C statement.
If a triangle contains an angle greater than 90 degrees, statement A, then it is an obtuse triangle, statement C.
We just use the law of syllogism to prove that if the A statement is true, then the C statement is also true. Now let's talk about the law of detachment. The law of detachment also begins by stating a true statement called the P statement. The P statement is followed by a second statement called the Q statement. If we know that the P statement is true, then we can also assume that the Q statement is true. Here's an example of using the law of detachment. This is Mickey. Mickey plays basketball. Mickey knows that if she plays badly at basketball practice, which is the P statement, then she will not play in the game Friday, which is the Q statement. We know that Mickey played badly at practice on Thursday, so we know that the P statement is true. By using the law of detachment, we know that if the P statement is true, then the Q statement must be true also, so therefore we know that Mickey won't play in the game on Friday. That was a valid or correct use of the law of detachment. Here's an example of an invalid or incorrect use of the law of detachment. If Mickey plays badly, P, then we know that Mickey won't play in the game, Q. We know that Q is true. Mickey didn't play in the game on Friday. Now it might seem logical to deduce that if Q is true, then P must be true as well. Wrong! We don't know if the reason Mickey missed the game was because she played badly. There's a million possibilities to answer why Mickey didn't play in the game. She could have been on a romantic vacation to the beach with her boyfriend, and that's why she didn't play. That's why it's invalid to use the law of detachment to say that if Q is true, then P has to be true as well. The only valid way to use the law of detachment is to say that if P is true, then Q is true. Now that we've covered deductive reasoning, let's talk about the next way to reason if something is true, inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning is used when you compile a bunch of examples of something and make a conclusion or assumption based off of those examples which you believe to be true. Here's an example. Amanda hates the books A Confederacy of Dunces, The Hunger Games, and Friday Night Lights. Therefore, we conclude that Amanda hates reading. So we concluded Amanda hates to read, but here's the issue with inductive reasoning. There's always a counterexample which could prove your conclusion false. A counterexample to the conclusion that Amanda hates reading is that Amanda loves the books The Lovely Bones, The Help, The Hobbit, and all the books in the library behind her. Obviously, Amanda doesn't hate reading, which was your previous conclusion. Therefore, your whole conclusion can be trashed based on one tiny counterexample. And that is exactly why deductive reasoning is more useful and accurate than inductive reasoning. By going through your evidence step by step until you're directly led to the conclusion, you eliminate any room for error. When you use inductive reasoning, you always run the risk of a counterexample being provided to ruin your theory. So that's it. We hope you enjoyed our video on how to figure out conclusions logically using both deductive and inductive reasoning.